I want to thank you all for joining us. This is a webinar that about probably a week and a half ago, we wouldn't have thought that we'd be putting on. We actually pivoted pretty quickly about other things that we were doing. We were planning on doing one on account-based marketing, but this is a little bit more relevant to the times that we're living through. So the genesis of this was a lot of our clients were canceling the events that they were going to, or the events were just canceling outright. And so we put together a quick 3 ways that they could get their marketing moving and get their sales moving. And so with this webinar, we hope to go through many different avenues that marketers can take, but overall, you have your own unique way of applying a lot of these things, and so those things should be kept into consideration as well. So to get things started, I want to introduce myself. My name's Ryan Lewis. I'm the president and founder of Bonfire Marketing. We focus on B2B marketing and with a heavy focus on account-based marketing and demand generation. And then with me, I also have Pam Didner. Pam Didner and I have been friends for a very long time, but she came from a very stellar career at Intel, and then has since written books on content, global content development, and also sales enablement tactics. So I want to welcome her on the phone as well.
Thank you, Ryan.
So again, I thank you all for joining us for this, because this is an extremely important subject right now, and we'll kind of go over a couple of reasons why, but we've been pulling as much information as possible leading up to this webinar. We actually have probably rewritten this webinar about 3 times now, because when we originally put it together, that was last Wednesday. So a lot has changed on a daily basis. So keep that in mind as we roll into this, but a couple of different statistics that we've been following and tracking, which is extremely important, is this is from a survey from Topo. Topo put out a survey to their clients, which most of them are high growth companies, but 79% of the respondents indicated that their pipeline had moderately or significantly decreased due to the coronavirus. And then cancellations to live events and conferences, one of the biggest categories for demand gen, has impacted their creation of pipeline. 87% of those surveyed agreed with that statement. So we're in a very precarious position as marketers and as sales enablers, that there's a lot of shifting, ground shifting underneath us that we need to attack proactively to make a big difference. The last one is more than half of American jobs are at risk because of coronavirus in the short term. There was a meme that went out that basically I love to apply to a lot of these things, and that is it's difficult for now. This thing will pass, and it's important to keep that in mind as we start analyzing our tactics and the things that we do, because yes, there will be some long-term impact here, but this gives us a chance to really analyze what is working and what isn't working, and that's what we try to explore today. So I also pulled one quote from Sequoia Capital: downturns, revenue, and cash levels always fall faster than expenses. So you're going to see revenue drop off if you have not already, and cash, and then revenues are going to remain constant. And that's a troubling scenario for a lot of businesses, and something to keep in mind as marketers and as salespeople as you try to communicate with your audience. But the other piece to this is, in some ways, business mirrors biology. Darwin summarized, those who survive are not the strongest and most intelligent, but the most adaptable to change. I think that is absolutely true in these moments, is that we need to be adaptable to change very quickly in order to survive. Sequoia Capital, they also are notorious for being a bit of a bellwether when these things happen, and people should listen to what they have to say. So we're trying to do something. I'm trying to relate this to flattening of the curve. There's absolutely the flattening the curve of the virus, and that is, obviously preventative measures and making sure that we're creating safe distances between people. But also, we have to look at the flattening the curve of marketing. So if you don't try to make some changes and flatten the curve of steep revenue drop off or expense changes, then you will have a sharp decrease in a lot of your business activity. And that's what we're trying to, in the tactics that we're going to be going through, we're trying to give you things to work on that can flatten the curve of your business operations. Because it's absolutely, health is, and I'm not trying to make a direct correlation to this, but the economic impact is pretty immediate. So we're going to focus on these three focus areas. One is technology, one is marketing tactics, and the last one is sales enablement. So going into that pretty quickly, because we don't have very much time today. I want to speak, and some of this is related to a little bit of we know this right now, and many of you on this phone call will know these things, but I do want to touch on them very specifically. One is webinar technology. So if you were doing live events prior, you're not doing them anymore. Doesn't mean you cannot communicate with your clients or develop things that are going to be compelling to them. They just can't be there in person. So we recommend and we believe that you need to invest heavily into the time and the due diligence of what webinar technology is out there and what will work for you. A couple that we've put as examples here. Zoom does a really good job. We use Zoom. We have for years now. They provide a lot of the tools that are highly effective for us to communicate. We've not really used them too much as a webinar technology, just personally, but we've used On24 for our clients. On24 is a much more robust type of technology. They can tell you how many people were on the webinar, how long they stayed. It gathers a lot more data than Zoom does. And the other one is WebEx, Cisco WebEx. They have a very robust set of tools under their umbrella as well. But wanted to speak to that just very briefly, as this is kind of a no-brainer at this point. But your teams, especially sales, if they are not familiar with these tools, a breath needs to be taken to really familiarize them with how these things function. Whether using video is appropriate, what the backgrounds look like, how does the sound good? All these things play into this and need to be instructed with your teams and then used appropriately as you try to communicate with your clients. We put a link down at the bottom of this that has G2 has a full list of all the different webinar technologies. We'll have that for all the technologies that are listed here. The next one is interactive technology. Now that people cannot see things possibly in person, a demo, a face-to-face, something along those lines, they need to have a way to consume understand and familiarize themselves with their product. This is going far beyond a PDF or a white paper or something along those lines. People need a little extra if you are not going to be able to be there in person. And so we wanted to invite some of this interactive technology to the picture. And what that is, companies like Tiled, Turtle, Ion Interactive, we've used all of these in practice. And Ion in particular is a very interactive type of platform that you can take possibly a static PDF and transform that into something that's far more interactive. By doing that, also you can get better data of who is interacting with that content, and you can have it adjust as people do interact with it, because a lot of these do have logics built into the technology, and you can track how people interact with things. Again, there's a link to all the different content creation on G2. The last one, and this is more of a platform-based type of scenario, and personalization technology I think is extremely important in these times, is that there isn't a salesperson pushing the narrative along as much, especially if people are holed up in their houses. But it's something to consider, is that one-on-one personal touch to this. The first one that we list here is Vidyard. Vidyard is a personalization video technology where it changes per whatever the audience is. It's pretty amazing technology, but it can be incorporated incorporated in any kind of marketing outbound campaigns. The other two are more based around what's the personalization once you get them, attract them to the website. So Path Factory, Instapage, these are ones that change what the suggested content is as people's behaviors are tracked on a website. And they're very effective. They give you scores like binge score, which is how much content somebody has consumed. People are behaviorally, they are digging deeper into what information is available, and they're looking for solutions. There's a lot of confusion out there and a lot of panic out there about how people are consuming and interacting with things. And Path Factory and Instapage can help push the narrative along if they are a prospect that's available. The next thing is marketing tactics, and I'll go through these fairly quickly. We will be providing email addresses, so if you have questions after this webinar, please feel free. But I want to speak a little bit real quickly about webinars. Because events have been canceled, some of you possibly had keynotes that you were speaking, you were having at those events. Those are sales opportunities that are enormous, and they're gone. They are completely lost. And so you have to find a replacement, and it's not going to be a one-to-one. We have to really analyze and make sure that we're not setting our expectations too high of what these things can do for you, because it isn't a one-to-one exchange. But it doesn't mean that you can't do these things. For some of our clients, they had several keynotes and workshops set up for these events where they are really showing their full capabilities and their thought leadership within that industry. You can still host those keynotes. You just need to do them remotely and then send them to the audience that was going to be there. But by the event being canceled and then not doing anything because of that, I think that's a failure in its own right. I think that's a non-starter, and that people need to be thinking a little bit more creatively of how they approach that. Same with workshops, and same with product announcements. You know, the Worldwide Developers Conference has been canceled. Google's conference was canceled. They are doing product announcements at these things. And on a smaller scale, a lot of other companies do product announcements at these trade shows. You can still do these things. It's not going to be as good as the event. Just setting those expectations, it won't be. But your message will still get out there. And otherwise, it's radio silence, and that's probably not a situation that anyone on this call wants to be in. The other piece is event partnerships. Another creative way that we're starting to look at these things is how can you partner with the event that was canceled or the event organizers, and maybe you can do something with that event organizer as a joint partnership type of webinar. The other piece to this, and we put some pro tips at the bottom, but some events, they do not provide the attendee list. We recommend that renegotiate those terms. Data is going to be key to outreach in this scenario. And if they still will not provide the attendee list, then try to rewrite some terms, try to learn possibly who was there through website scraping or any other way. Obviously all of it being white hat, but that data is critical to understanding who was going to be there and who you can generate as your audience for this messaging. Sprint campaigns. This is the next piece, is that if you have long-term campaigns, and campaigns we typically describe as, a year and a half that you need to be looking at this, and tactics really break down what you're going to be doing at these things. We're starting to classify things into sprint campaigns, and that is how quickly can you be, how agile can you be, and how quickly you can change your messaging that applies to this. So my first boss, I love him to death, and he instilled in me, I worked in radio, and the thing that he said is the only radio station anyone cares about is WITD-FM. And that's what's in the deal for me. All messaging needs to be put through that lens. It's no longer product selling, it's very much solution selling. And any kind of marketing messaging or tactics need to be put through that lens of what's in the deal for me, for this audience. How do they see your product? How do they see your solution? And make adjustments very quickly and make sure that those adjustments see the light of day very quickly and you can test them. Channel partnership inclusion. So if you are selling through channel partners or resellers, making sure that you're including them in your tactics. In panic, in a lot of adjustments, sometimes we just run individually. Partnerships are going to be key in a lot of this because you need them. You need them when this passes. You need them now. And sometimes they have access to your audience that you don't. So integrating those partnerships is going to be extremely important. Same with reseller inclusion. And the last piece is sales inclusion, making sure that salespeople know exactly what you're doing so that they can act on it immediately. No longer can you wait a couple of days before you pass a lead on to sales. It needs to be an immediate function in any kind of marketing campaign. Pro tip, I already touched on this, messaging needs to change from ROI to scarcity. Scarcity being, there's a limited amount that we have available. And the last piece is direct mail. Some things to consider. If you can no longer visit your clients, then you need to start considering sending lunches to them. You need to start considering sending swag that was at the event. Other things that they can remember you by. Same with product. But direct mail it really needs to be the forefront of a lot of these things and needs to be considered. The last and the pro tip on this was focus on working pipeline first. Net new won't hear you, and that's a overgeneralization. But there's only so much time in the day. There's only so much that we can do immediately, and so we recommend focusing on working pipeline, especially high velocity deals first, and then working on the net new later. So with that, I will pass this on to Pam.
Second. So Ryan, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, very, very good. Thank you, everybody. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, wherever time zone that you're calling into this webinar. Thank you so much. And I understand that this is a somber time, just like Ryan indicated, and all of us feel the pain. And from my perspective, now is actually a perfect time. If you have not, it's the time to actually start engaging with sales. If you are working with your sales team closely, fantastic. They are your BFF. Try to actually enhance that relationship, if you will. And there are three things I want to talk about and just to share with you in terms of what are some of the best options to actually work with the sales team as a marketer. The first one is you need to think about modifying your product messaging and positioning. The second one is about revise your content based on the new positioning, which is I just talked about, and to take into account of the current new formats of a virtual communications. Obviously, sales love to do face-to-face. Now it's an opportunity they can't. So they are forced to change and they're using the new tools, and you need to understand how they are using that tools and better help them in terms of their communication. Another one is give them some love and give the strategic account the air covered, right? And to complement the sales engagement. So with that being said, let's move on to the next slide. And the couple examples I want to share with you in terms of modifying the product messaging and positioning, that has a lot to do with the business strategy changes. For example, I'm a platinum members of United, and I got this message. And if you actually have flown to United, you know that if you want to make any reservation changes, they charge you whopping $200, right? It doesn't matter unless you pay 3 times of airfare. Otherwise, you have to pay the reservation change fees. And you can see the email I got was actually way before March 3rd. They basically said, hey, I know customers are looking for more flexibility as they make their travel plan right now, which is true, right? Everybody's canceling the traveling plans and the future reservation. They basically said, guess what? If you book anything at this time between March 3rd and March 31st, you can change it for free for the next 12 months. It doesn't matter your location, destination, the date, you can make the changes with no change fee. Same thing for Loom. Loom is actually a video platform. If you haven't used them, you should look into it. I love using Loom to make a quick video recording to share some of the feedback I have with my, say, social media manager, or even I want to say a quick thank you to a potential prospect. I do a quick recording on Loom and I just send it out. It's a wonderful and easy tool to use. And for Loom, they actually have a premium version of it. They also have a pay version, which is the Pro. On the free, I call it premium, or a free version of it, you can only record up to 25 videos. Now they actually changed their free plan to about from 25 to unlimited, right? And they're also cutting the price of Loom Pro in half. Before it was $10, now it's $5, right? And they changed the existing all free trial from 14 days to 30 days. On top of it, this is the most important part. They know that all the teachers and also K-12 and the education institution, universities are doing everything online. So they are really working hard to make sure that the tool is available for teachers and students, right? If you are a marketer for Loom, this is a business strategy change. On top of it, you have to change your messagings and your positioning of your product. Second thing that you have to change is the content. Right? In the past, you're probably creating content horizontally that apply to all industry segments. Now with this specific direction change, you have to think through that some of the key content that you are going to create needs to be specifically tailored for teachers and students, and also K-12 schools, universities, and other education institutions. So all of a sudden, as a marketer for Loom, you need to think it through. Oh, now with this direction changes, I need to think it through in terms of the segments I need to go after to align with the product messagings, positioning, and also the vertical that sales team will go after, right? And right here, just like what Ryan indicated, WITDFM, you know, what does that mean to you? Well, obviously for me, I'm a pro member. I'm actually going to get some of my money back, and that apply to next year. That's great. So this is actually a very good email in terms of talking about the changes and how the marketers modify the product messaging and the positioning changes, and at the same time, increase the pipeline. Does that make sense? Now let's move on to the next one. And you probably said, okay, Pam, that's great, but that's a B2C examples. Understood, understood. Now I'm going to share with you in terms of B2B example, Sirius XM. And a lot of you probably have it. I'm actually a member as well. Obviously, consumer is the probably biggest portion and also revenue drivers, but they also have for business right here on the upper right-hand corner, right? When you click on that, this is the page that show in terms of they obviously sell this specific product through the authorized resellers, just like Ryan indicated. They are working very closely with resellers and channel partners to sell this to businesses, which is their right model. I see that as the right model for Sirius SM. So with that being said, you can see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they have a 6 talking point or positioning to sell to businesses, right? Before is probably monthly fee, now is low monthly fee, right? Maybe in the past, they actually have a long-term contract that you have to sign. Now they have no long-term contract. So there are some messagings are changing, and you need to make sure that your content and your messages align with the new direction to actually help educate the resellers. So modifying existing or creating content is actually essential. So how does that impact you? I mean, you were like, oh yeah, you know what? I do this all the time. I totally understand. But engaging with sales, you need to start observing and understanding how sales use the current online conferencing tools, right? And then create the sales-centric contents to align with that. And your demos, videos, and just like Ryan indicated, which is interactive content, that needs to be easily shareable and easily incorporated into the company's online conference tool. Another thing is very, very important is while you are creating content, just don't create the content and pass that to a sales team. Is it possible that you can provide in the right context and map your content to a different sales stages? Okay. So with that being said, that's one thing that you need to pay attention to. And the last one I want to talk about is use account-based marketing to provide air cover. And now is the time that you need to stay very closely with the sales team, especially about their game plans, right? Maybe when they started year 2020, they have a very ambitious goal to actually go after new accounts. But now, with the current situation, they probably need to make adjustment between the existing versus new customer ratio. And you need to understand that because that will impact your demand generation goals. Okay. Another thing is the total sales revenue, annual revenue they have to achieve may be the same, but they probably make an adjustment between quarters in terms of what that revenue should be. Again, you need to understand that, and then you have to modify your demand generation goal accordingly. Another thing that Ryan mentioned in terms of a sales pipeline, they are looking into the existing sales pipeline very, very closely, right? Whatever's in the pipeline, they probably look into it, have a lot of thoughts, and they are modifying and determine what is actually the right plans to move forward. And they are going to have a multiple or more frequent sales huddles meetings, and you need to attend that just to stay close, right? And another thing that you need to think about in terms of account-based marketing is you will need to find, I guess, a challenge or a difficult time in terms of how to rebalance your marketing outreach between the top of the funnel and also the bottom of the funnel accounts um, uh, communications. And another thing that you will run into is in terms of budget discussion, right? And I was in the corporate world for a long period of time. I totally understand in a time like this, the first things that got cut is travel budget. The second thing got cut is a marketing budget, right? So you probably have to go through the 5% budget cut reduction scenario, 10% as well. And you need to look into it and see if you can maintain and salvage some of the marketing budget. And one of the best way to do that is align with the sales goal. Okay, so look into that and then see if you can do what you can to make sure that you take care of your sales team and also maintain your marketing budget. All right, with that being said, I want to pass Patam back to Ryan.
So I'm going to do my best to wrap it up here. The main focus and the main concern we have, especially with sales and marketing, is there's been a lot of press coverage about service industry workers losing their jobs or being furloughed or laid off or multiple of other things. And that is absolutely in these times probably going to be the first move. But the second is sales. They're not necessarily laid off per se, but a lot of them are 100% commission, and that doesn't show up in a lot of statistics, government statistics, because you don't really report those things like you do with unemployment. But that's something that will hit their bottom line and hinder their ability to function. And so this is something that is near and dear to all of us as marketers. Is we have to enable the conversation. We have to dig deep, partner with them, and adjust things immediately to make sure that we're meeting their need. It's not going to always be home runs. Our efforts are not going to be immediately effective, but through fine tuning and integration with what sales is doing and their efforts, I think that you're going to be able to craft a message that gets the market moving, because that's the most important thing here, is to keep people from not waiting, or keep people from waiting in these times. So we've got a couple of bullet points here. One thing is think of this as a long distance relationship. Lots of calls, lots of letters, lots of contact. You need to overcome the current situation of not being able to connect with somebody face to face. And the only way to do that, I mean, is through trying multiple channels and also being vigilant and being with your outreach and how you communicate with your audience. So think like a long distance relationship. You know, if you were dating in high school or college or whatever, and you had to call your girlfriend or boyfriend frequently just to make sure you had that contact, that's the mentality and the mode that you need to be considering. Get sales involved. We've been beating this drum a lot on this call, but it's really important. Understand what they need now. Get on calls with them if needed. Enable them to be effective. Get partners involved. I spoke to this a little bit as well. They are the front lines and they need the company's help. How can they be an extension of your sales? And how we treat our partners and how we treat our resellers now will echo into the future. They will see us. They will see you as a company they want to partner with in the future and build that long-term relationship. Dig for data. Get really granular and find the customers that potentially need your solution now. That's a velocity type of piece, is what are the high velocity opportunities that are there, and capitalize on those. The ones that are going to be taking 18 months, 24 months, even a quarter, be looking a little bit more near term. I have spoken with a lot of businesses over the last week, and I kind of equate it to Black Friday. Black Friday's tactics are mostly to capitalize on the any kind of discretionary income that people have, and that's a finite amount right now. The businesses are in the same position where they have a finite amount of OpEx and CapEx cash laying around, and that's going to go to people that provide a messaging with a solution the fastest. So dig for that data, look for the high velocity customers, and get that messaging to them. Be creative, find new ways to reach your customers, ways that are very sympathetic to what is going on with them, but ways that possibly you've not tried before. Now's the time to get creative with your tactics and make sure that you're reaching people possibly how they have not seen you before. And the last piece of this is, I think it's really important, is coming together. In times of need and crisis, it's important to use it as an opportunity to really come together with your team, your internal team, with your clients. But working fragmented will only result in failure. If we're moving in different directions as a team or as marketers, then it's not going to be the outcome that we were hoping for. And so unify your teams. Make sure that everybody has an understanding of what is going on. Daily calls. I've heard a lot of companies moving to daily calls and daily huddles. Those are things that need to be explored. And then and make sure that the right message is being put out to the client, so that's not confusing either. A big piece to this is simplifying your message and simplifying your tactics so that you can be known and remembered in a very noisy period. So the last is a call. It's a call to marketers. It's a call to sales. It's a call to everybody, is to drive forward and be proactive. We can't sit still, and we have to keep pushing and thinking of new ways to do things, because as I stated at the beginning of this webinar, we redid this webinar 3 times because things had changed so rapidly throughout the week, and we can't really foresee that changing too much as far as the adjustments and the speed in which they do change. But the only way to feel that we have a sense of control and obviously effectiveness out there is to keep driving forward. So I hope that's the conclusion of this webinar. I hope it's been helpful. As mentioned before, we'll provide our email addresses if you need anything, but we're also going to be providing a checklist so that summarizes everything that was in this webinar, and hopefully it helps you analyze what you're currently doing and make adjustments as necessary. I want to thank you all for joining us today. I know that it was a bit last minute. I think the first invite went out last Thursday, and now we're here. I want to thank Pam for joining me on this call. Her wealth of knowledge from the corporate side, and also just with sales enablement and other things that she explores, she has a a huge depth of knowledge with how to explore these problems. And
Thank you,
then my
Ryan.
team for throwing all this together. This was a last minute scenario, and they worked tirelessly to make this all happen. So thank you, Nikki, that's on this call, and John and Matt and everyone else involved. So thank you all.
Thank you so much.
So with that, I think we're going to stop the call. We're not going to be doing questions, but just because we're over on time. But we will be sending this out. I have a chat, so we'll see if, yeah, there we go. All right. Thank you all.